Thanksgiving morning, I went out for a pretty seemingly harmless jog. So for my kids, it's like I'll be back in 22 minutes. And then I never came back. I was just bouncing on the crosswalk, waiting to go. There was a young man coming out. Unbeknownst to me, I later found out he was on his way to meet his girlfriend's parents for the first time, and he was supposed to be there around 10. He looked at his watch, it was 10:15. I thought he saw me, so I stepped into the crosswalk, and he gunned it in order to beat the two cars that were coming 50 miles an hour towards us. A woman that had been walking her dog, I heard her scream. I just remember telling myself, this is happening, it's real, let go, don't fight. And I just let go. I smashed into his windshield, and then I flew off of his car, and I went about 10 or 15 feet in the air, and I landed on my head. This is the highest pitch sound I've ever heard in my life. I couldn't hear anyone or anything. It was like kind of chaos, and I was trying to like piece together things, and my shoes were in one area and a hat was in the other area, and my phone was smashed up below, and I just remember my head was killing me, and so I put my hand back like this, and it came forward because it felt like jello, and it came forward, and I just saw like whole clots of black, and it was pieces of my head and tissue, and I blacked out. That was the end of that. I woke up in my Aunt Justine's farm, which was my favorite childhood vacation spot. 4 years old in my red Keds and my jean cutoffs in a field. What I call they, it was one, but it was they, communicating to me that it's not my time. I wanted to stay. It was the most beautiful light. It was like the purest essence of love, but it was time for me to go. And they were there to usher me to go back. And then woof, I ended up in my body.
We have identified one patient.
I kept hearing this pound, pound, and that was the weight of the fireman's boot was walking around my head trying to wake me up, like just trying to ask questions and move around. And they asked me questions like, you know, who are you? What's your name? I don't know anything. It was just a Jane Doe, and I had no ID on me. And when I saw his name tag, I'm like, Brown, that's a color. And as soon as I could remember a color, I'm like, wait, I have children. You only have X amount of time until maybe the brain is not going to be okay. So there's like a stopwatch, they stop, but there's a group of questions they ask you to see, and it's usually like, who's president? What season is it? So I do vaguely remember, I think I said Eisenhower, and if I was just in my Aunt Justine's farm, that would mean it's summer. So they just went, wrap her up.
About to get transported, loaded up on the gurney.
This man, he seemed like 7 feet tall with like white hair, came back and he said, listen, as soon as we open these doors, there's a lot of people waiting for you, and I need you to promise me a few things. You are not gonna pass out. I'm like, I won't, I promise I won't. He's like, don't pass out. And he said, the other thing is, I'm gonna tell you 3 things, and I want you to remember them. I'm gonna find you later today, and I'm gonna ask you these 3 things. Brian Greenball 15. As an auctioneer, how I remember, and I don't use notes, everyone knows I work without notes, is that I use different cues in the room or codes to kind of kick my memory back in. When I was 15, I did date a guy named Brian, and I went to Greens Farms Academy. So I'm like, Brian Greenball 15, I can do that. And that very game I played for my job was starting to save me in my own memory. My injury was back in the cerebellum. They gave me a towel to bite, and they stapled my head shut and said, just don't pass out. They couldn't put anything in the injury because they didn't know that basically whether or not something had gone on with the brain in there, and so you couldn't do that. So I basically just had to bite a towel while they stapled my head shut, which in and of itself, you know, you're 1, 2, 3, oomph, you know, 1, 2, 3, and it's just bang, bang. When you're finally stable, everyone disappears. And that's when you know you're okay. And so they put me in a private room. At that point, my former husband and my 2 kids showed up.
My mom was just covered in blood, and I didn't know how to take it, and I fainted.
Unbeknownst to me, hair was crusted with blood, dark, everything. I don't know, nobody let me see a mirror, thank goodness.
She insisted to the nurses that she needs to go home, and they said, okay, you need to walk around the premises. And she literally got up and did just that. And by 5, she's cooking us Thanksgiving dinner.
She tries to open the oven and completely misses and hits the cupboard instead. There's just simple things that, like, simple motor skills that everyone would think is super easy. It was hard to watch.
She did what she could, but there was a lot hindering her from doing, you know, what she wanted.
Hopefully they're gonna bring those lights down a little, because I feel like I'm a Phoenix Skylarker. My name's Letitia Frye.
My eyes had atrophied so hard, my vision was blurred and off. I couldn't handle white lights. I started to hear the sound that infrared and fluorescent lighting was making in a store, scream and run out of a store. I mean, you think you're losing your mind.
1,200 people in a room on average, that means there are 600 households in here. So I'm gonna see if 54 of you would be willing to give $1,000.
My mom, she's just a warrior. But the bounce back and watching all of that was truly what inspires me.
It has been Sold.
You couldn't even tell today that she actually went through an accident because she's put in so much work and so much effort to bounce back. Whether that was when we would sit down together as a family and do something simple as, I Spy, or, Where's Waldo? Simple things that made her like motor skills, kind of like physical therapy, slowly build back up. And, she put in the work constantly.
I've got 10,000, 11,000, now 12.
That for me is like the pinnacle of what I want to be as I grow up. I want to be like her with just the sheer amount of strength she possesses, like the sheer amount of drive.
85, you put it at 8,000, 5, you put it at 85, 7, you put it at 17.
Many other auctioneers stand behind a podium, item number 1, and then they start their chant. They just go down the line. She explained, okay, $50,000, this is what they're going to do. We're going to get buses, or we're going to get this.
Here is because this state is changing, and you're leading that.
Bidders that are in that crowd, they are educated after that when they leave there.
I have been here since day one, and it has been such an honor to watch.
She doesn't just know that because they've told her. Most of them haven't. She's actually been there to their locations, been on the website, seen the people that they're helping, and she's been there one-on-one. And I've watched her and seen all the things that she'd been doing and all the money she'd been raising for these amazing nonprofits.
She doesn't cast judgment. She fully accepts. And I think that was, for me personally, is the biggest thing that I noticed before and after.
It's been 8 years, a few weeks ago, since I was hit, but it has been the past 3 years where I went on a very, very deep internal healing dive. And I can look back at a brain injury now and realize I had an opportunity to remove myself from the false persona I had created as me. So it was a blessing.